Assalamu alaikum. It's not off topic, it's just a little bit outside of what I had prepared, but suddenly it dawned on me of how much copying Christianity, specifically Catholicism, is done here in the Middle East. And so much of it is done in defiance of Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. He is a scholar, and he is very well recognized all over the world, and I follow him. Now, he's called Sheikh al-Islam by the Salaf group, but one of the things that he had mentioned in his book about don't follow those destined for the hellfire, اقتداء الصراط المستقيم اختلاف أهل الجحيم. So I'm always interested in these types of, let's say, treatises, when a person is brave enough and strong enough in the religion that they can back up everything they say with accurate, not only historical proofs, but aqidah that is so tightly bound to what your heart and mind know. Now, let's begin with using fire in any form of worship. Maybe you wouldn't realize it like I do, but Ibn Taymiyyah forbid any fire, even including candles. We have bonfires now, where people literally go to the beach and put, you can say, stacks of wood or kerosene on, sprinkling on, whatever, to make a giant fire. And then they'll sit around, as perhaps the older cultures, Hindus or even American Indians perhaps, I don't know, but they had films where they would sit around fires and chant. Now, let's begin at the beginning. Who knows what Jesus did? We have no record of Jesus using fire. So Christians, where did this come from? Well, like most things, it comes from the Pope giving orders to the priests, and the priests are under strict, I don't know what the punishment would be, but it would be excommunication if they didn't obey the Pope. They would be, at best, kicked out of the church, and who knows what else. I mean, in the Middle Ages, they'd be burned at the stake and so forth. So now I recall my youth. The first thing we did upon entering the church is to light a candle. And so when you opened the door, the minute you walked in, they had this whole spread. It was like a long table, and it had levels going up, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they would have these little, they call them votive candles, V-O-T-I-V-E. You can still buy them everywhere in America. And they're tiny candles. I mean, they wouldn't even be useful for lighting up anyone's house when the electricity got cut off, but they were used strictly for you to pay a quarter. That's how much it was way back in the day. And you would put your money in this little box with a slot on it. And then they had a reed, a very thin, tiny branch. And you would pick one after you had paid your quarter. And then you would light it on one of the other candles that were already lit. And then you would light your own new candle and make a wish. So it was all connected to fire being useful for you. Because if you bought that little candle, then your wish would be accepted, they taught us. Moving on to birthday parties. We would always have a cake with candles. And we were taught that everyone would sing happy birthday to you, and then you would blow out your candles. So all the adults would stand around you, and if you're the birthday girl, the cake was in front of you, and the candles signified how old you were. And I remember my birthday when I was 6, and there were 6 candles, and this is what you had to do. Now, I'm not saying I know it, but many other Muslims have mentioned this is a form of what they do when they're making the seher magic that some people believe in. You would do this, and you would blow around, and if you got your candles extinguished, everyone would applaud for you. And many times some children couldn't, and then the adults would blow them out for them. It's just nonsense, but this is how we were raised. Then, moving on up to other forms of celebrations where people carry candles. They hold lit candles. Now, unfortunately, when I married my Egyptian husband in a hotel after I already got married twice before, I had an Islamic wedding and I had a civil wedding. But for some reason, 6 months later, I found myself in a big, expensive wedding in a hotel. I don't want to go through gory details. However, some of the waiters were holding candles. And I remember I was not pleased. However, I didn't know anything about what I hadn't studied. So now when I look back on the pictures of my wedding and I see that they were, the way they are in these expensive hotels, they put one hand behind their back and then they hold the candles. Well, that's just, anyway. Let's get on to the eternal flame. We have something called the Arlington National Cemetery, and it's in Washington, D.C., very near the White House. And that cemetery is where the dead, fallen soldiers are buried if they fell doing their national duty of dying in a war. So if you are to visit that, you might want to Google it and check it out, because every single grave, and there's thousands of them, has a cross on it. So I don't know if you're forced into that. I really don't know, because I'm sure that many of my relatives and many Catholics and Protestants are buried there, but probably not my family, because my Grandma Rosie would not want anything that didn't have the Catholic Church in it. So this isn't the Catholic Church that did that. This is the American government, the federal government. And the reason I'm putting it in the classification of the fire is there's something there called the eternal flame. And presidents always go and visit it and bow, and I don't know what they're doing, some form of prayer. But that eternal flame signifies something very, in my opinion, wrong. It's never allowed to go out. So they have caretakers of this flame. And I don't know the details in it. I never read about it on Google, but you should. I think it's rather interesting, even though it's completely wrong in Islam. This fire, and it's encased in some sort of like a sconce or some sort of I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't have a word for it, but it's enveloped in something so that the wind wouldn't blow it out. And the story goes that it's never gone out from the time that this cemetery was made. And the name of it is the Eternal Flame. And American presidents always go and visit there out of respect for the fallen, wounded, dead patriots that fought in wars. For me, it was always, I in my world, because I always feared the hellfire and I always believed in heaven and hell. When I was young and I saw that, I just thought that that was an atrocity, that you would be worshiping a flame. Are you worshiping a flame? Or what is going on here with that flame? It's some sort of misinformation, misinterpretation. Well, please don't tell me it's Satan worship, because we have so much of that going on now in the world, so much deliberate defiance of Allahu Akbar. So that's why I'm putting it out there for you, so that you can distinguish and differentiate and hopefully learn and not do anything similar. So let's get now to the the utmost, what I believe is the worst thing, cremation of bodies in fire. Now, we were raised up to know that only Hindus do this. The East Indian people that have the cow worship and they have their sadhus or whatever they call these men who are barely naked. I mean, they're just like, they wear a little string, like a little string, and they don't ever wash, and they're really, 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 really scrungy. They have long, long, long hair that they never wash. And what they love to do is when the bodies of the cow worshippers, the Hindus, are cremated in the ovens, and that's the only way they get, well, they don't get buried. That's the only way over there. There's no burial. Hinduism is cremation. So they get put in ovens, and then their ashes are given to whomever is waiting outside. And these sadhus, or these half-naked men, not half, 90% naked men, they take the ashes of the dead bodies and they put it all over themselves, including their hair and their face and everywhere else. So when you see them, they just look like gray ash skin, even though their skin is brown because they're East Indians. Now, you can say, well, that's them. What's your problem with that? Oh, I have a big problem with that because at my age, I remember when no one would ever get cremated. But because the cost of embalming, which is what Catholics did and do, maybe half of them now, they cremate, because this whole thing about embalming the bodies, which I'll have to do another lesson on that because that is so psycho. They say it comes from Pharaoh. Who knows? I don't know. I'll include that in my lesson about the embalming process, but we would never think of that. We wouldn't dream of that. Well, now, I can tell you half of Americans get cremated because the process has become very expensive, deliberately by the criminals that hate America and just want it to just dissolve into sin. They've made it cheap to get embalmed. I'm sorry, to get cremated instead of being embalmed. Why? When you stop and think about it, there could be a double-edged sword here. Number one, to make you totally destined for the hellfire, because Allah has told you that you should be buried intact in the ground, from which you will be raised up again on Judgment Day when the trumpet is sounded and everybody comes out of their grave and they run towards the judgment. So these criminals who always twist Allah's words have made the process of becoming cremated romantic. And this is how they do that. What do we know? Oh, I have to hurry up. They give you the ashes, and you take the ashes of your dead loved one, and it'll be in a pretty vase, so you can put it on the mantle, or maybe you can leave it next to your bed, and then you will have the choice of saving them or throwing them on the ocean, or going to a mountaintop and throwing them to the winds at the top of a mountaintop. And they make this very, very dramatic and emotional and romantic. And you see the enemy that we're up against. Pay attention. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi